Now you can hear me. They cleaned the stage for me. That's a bit intimidating, but it works. So, hello, my name is Thijs Biersteker. I'm an artist that works together with the top scientists on the environmental courses in the world, and I take their facts and their findings and I turn them into art installations. Art installations that make you feel the facts. And before I start, and I never thought I would do this, I have to put out a disclaimer, because tomorrow you're going to talk about AI, and all the images that I will show of the work, they are not generated by AI. They're generated by hand, by human hands, as you can see. And if I have time left in the end, I will explain you how this came to be. So yesterday, when I arrived, I saw the panel next after me is going to be about the future of museums. And I was talking to Wim, and I was talking to Wim about how I, as an artist, go into a museum. I feel overwhelmed. I feel intimidated by its white walls, and then I enjoy the art. And then I want to hang on to something. So what I do is I go to the little signs next to it, and I try to read them. And I'm going to be blunt with you, because I'm Dutch, and that is a bit of my trait. So when I move to it, I encounter something that alienates me. When the art world is describing itself, it is alienating, it's an insider vocabulary, it becomes inaccessible, unpersonable, and what it creates in that sense, it basically, if something is inaccessible, it degrades its credibility. And when I was explaining this to him, I realized I gave this exact same speech a year ago in front of the UN, because I was talking about how climate science has become inaccessible, unpersonable, unrelatable, and because of that, it became unactionable. So the moment the credibility starts to decay, we are in trouble. So in the art world, that's fine, because that's not the real world. But when science starts to be decaying in its credibility, we are in trouble, the trouble that we are in now. And that is really hard for the planet at this moment. So the facts, the climate and the state of the climate at this moment, it has become overwhelming, it has become numbing, and it's become unimaginable. And if something is unimaginable, it becomes unactionable. So I believe that we're not only into a climate crisis or a biodiversity crisis, but we're also into an imagination crisis. And I might be a bit biased here, but I think that's the part that can be solved by art. Because art has the power to make us feel the facts. It has the power to help us imagine where we're going to. It has the power to help us imagine, for example, how one cigarette butt that you can throw on the ground pollutes over 500 liters of water every day. This is the data visualization that we created out of that. Or it can help us imagine how the particles that are all around us are being enlarged 4,000 times by scanning the air, enlarging the particles, and see how much ends up in our lungs and how much it deducts from our life expectancy. Or it can connect us to nature in ways that we are losing our ability to by connecting trees to sensors and giving them a voice of nature in real time. Because I believe that's the power of art. Art can make it personal, relatable, and understandable. And we have something really special, all the art makers here, because we can turn the complex into the compelling. We can turn these big, complex issues, and by making them small, relatable, and understandable again, and by doing that, we create gateways to understand the bigger picture again. We create gateways to understand the climate science and generate action. And a good example is a collaboration we did with UNESCO a few years ago on the deforestation of the Amazon. Now, I've been hearing this my whole life, since I was young till now. The Amazon was being deforested. And by hearing these headlines over and over and over again, I believe people just became numb by the numbers. They became blind by the images, and well, they get headache by all the headlines. So we need to address these urgent topics in ways that are speaking to our imagination. So we took the data stream from the deforestation in the Amazon, and we brought that to sculptures. So what you can see here is a sculpture, and every leaf that turns transparent, it marks the loss of 100 square meters of rainforest being cut down right now at this moment. Every flickering here is 100 square meters. So we took that data, and we took that slice of rainforest out of the rainforest, put it into a museum, and made it disappear in front of you, making you feel the facts, making that data that you normally ignore creep under your skin. And that works. It works here in a museum in a nice, elegant context. It works at the Barbican, where for younger audience or smaller audiences, it's accessible. People walk by every day here. 2,000 people came by, and after a while, we heard people just trying to figure out another route, just to avoid the heaviness of the topic. But I think that's the power of art. It can make these facts accessible, and by doing so, it can build that gateway to these heavier subjects. So these works, they work well in context of museums. They work well in context for a younger audience, for biologists, but also for policymakers. We have put these elements in different conferences around the world, from the IUCN to the COPs, and people are engaged with it in levels that I didn't held for imaginable. So then we started to engineer this a little bit better. And we created a collaboration with the Natural History Museum at the COP15. So this was in Montreal. And the COP15 is one of the most important ones. You have the climate COPs, that's a nice show. But the COP is where they negotiate the power basically they negotiate the future of the biodiversity of the world. So what we did there is we had journalists inside of the negotiation rooms. While they're negotiating and the big decisions were being made, they directly sent the data to our team from the Natural History Museum. The Natural History Museum, they flew in 2 scientists that calculated the impact of the decisions being made right there at that moment. And at that exact moment, we loaded it up into the sculpture, into the center of the conference. So we got a direct data visualization of how the conference was doing. And I got a picture of that. I got a picture of how it looked at the conference, but this is the best one I could find, and there's somebody eating in front of it. So I will just explain how it looked. So the sculpture, it moved up and down based on how the conference was doing. And the first day, it's a pretty simple, direct one, right? So the first day, people were like, oh, that's cool, that's art. The second day, a few media people showed up, like, so how does it work? And we're like, hey, this is the idea. The third day, we got invited to the global press conference to talk about the artwork. The fourth day, the media were lining up in front of it to use it as a backdrop. Policymakers, they came there and they started to check, like, hey, so how's the plant doing? And then indigenous leaders came. They talked to the scientists of the Natural History Museum who were there. Policymakers came, heads of state, and they all start to mingle in this neutral space that art can create. Because we created something that created a bit of hope, it created a bit of tension, but it also created a neutral space. So at that moment, heads of state were meeting the scientists who do the actual field work in front of it. They had something to talk about. They had a conversation starter, and they had a gateway. taking away the boundaries between policy and science just because we use art there. And for me, that was amazing. And of course, the world was saved after that. No, that's not true. Because I think we all know the realistic part. People are just putting their head into the ground. If we talk about climate facts, and if we talk about the realistic implications that are noticeable here, of course, but all around the world, people are sticking their heads in the ground. And to be honest, I do that as well. And I think a lot of you will do the same. And to be honest, I think we're right. I think we should stick our heads in the ground for this. And that's because under the ground, something really beautiful is happening. Under the ground, trees talk to each other. They share nutrients. They share warning signals. They keep each other strong and healthy as one. And that's an important message that we can learn from nature. So we worked together with the Italian scientist Stefano Mancuso. We took his data from his lab, how trees communicated, and we trained two AIs to continue the conversation as if you were there with them, under the ground, with them, seeing how it works, seeing how a collaboration can be a competition for light on top, but keeping each other strong and healthy as one underneath. And I think that's an important message, because I believe when art and science combined, they're the most powerful tool to make change. If art and science collide, then the facts and the feelings unite. And then I believe we can turn these facts into acts. Thank you. So I have 2 minutes left. I can do two things. One, a question, or two, I can explain this. Shall I explain that? Okay. So I'm a bit nervous now, because in 2 days we will be showing Art Basel for the first time on 2 locations in the Messe, and we're going to show work. So the last week we've been working with the whole team really hard, and the last screw that we needed to turn in, I turned and I heard a little snap. So yesterday when somebody gave me a hand, I was like, oh, this is serious. But we're working really, really hard to get 2 pieces there, just in time ready for Basel. And I'm going to give you a quick sneak preview. I've never done this, so come back and give me feedback. So we created a sculpture there that you can plug into a living tree, and it can show the sap flow. So you can see how much liquid is going through the tree. You can relate to it in a way that you can feel the connection between nature, like how much is drinking at that time, how much sap flows through our bodies, and how that relates to nature. Because I believe if we can reflect on something like that, that's the moment we start to protect it. So we're going to be showing this, you get a preview, for the first time at Art Basel, in the Messe, in the garden, and at the Collectors Lounge. And over there I'm going to be the first artist showing in the roundbound, and also the first artist who doesn't sell work at Art Basel in its history. So that's going to be interesting, and I hope you enjoy this piece. And with that, that was the end.